Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It's by the beautiful South. It is Superbi. So yes, I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my CD copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. This review was requested by Dan Moore. He's from the Paul Heaton Facebook group. Now he recently sold me this CD and requested the review. He also showed me this poster as well. This really nice promo poster for Heaton's 2001 solo album Fat Chance. So a big thank you to Dan for those, but yes, I will just crack on with the review. So this was the band's 10th and final album, released on the 15th of May in 2006. The last album before this was the covers collection Gold Diggers, Head Knockers and Folk Songs, and the last album of original material was 2003's Gaze, which made this the longest gap between album releases in Heaton's career, up to this point. The band enlisted producer Ian Stanley, who was a former member, I believe, of Tears for Fears. I'm not sure if he was an official member, but he certainly worked with them on a couple of their really big albums. This was after parting ways with John Kelly, who had produced every Beautiful South album since 1992's 0898. So quite a significant change of producer there for them. However, this album doesn't sound anything like, say, Tears for Fears, or anything say Ian Stanley's that maybe worked on in Feel Like or Vibe. Instead it says quite true to the Beautiful South's established sound, albeit with a bit more an Americana country sort of flavour to it. Now, upon release, the album charted at number 6 here in the UK, which was stronger than the last two albums, but certainly a far cry from number ones of the late 90s. And while critically it got their best reviews since the Quench album in 1998. Now, notably, the band would split up about a year after releasing this album, citing music similarities, as opposed to the cliche of musical differences. And I'd say that music similarities is very true, because the music had got a bit samey, a bit predictable, and I think by this point maybe Paul Heaton just wanted a change of the musicians he was working with. So I will show you the CD copy of it, what I have here. So it is a signed one there by Paul Heaton. There's the back cover of it there. It's sort of a digipack sort of thing. Just opens like that, you get the CD, and then you get a little booklet as well, which just has artwork and lyrics in it there. So yeah, that is the CD looked at. So I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. So I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
And the Rose of My Cologne.
So we have a song called The Rose of My Cologne, which is an upbeat country number sung mostly by Alison Wheeler, who was a vocalist who had replaced Jackie Abbott a couple of years previous. Lyrically, it's about a sort of a dysfunctional family upbringing. She sings on it, Daddy was a local drunk, Mama was the loosest girl in town. It's very upbeat, quite Americana, sort of with all these steel guitars all over it. It's not a kind of favourite of mine. I don't particularly like that style of music. And for me, it isn't one of the Beautiful South's best songs, really. It also issued as a single from the album, and it failed to chart completely. Perhaps this was the death knell for the band, because all their singles previous had at least charted, whereas this one here a complete flop. And I must say, maybe rightfully so, because I don't quite think it's single material.
Rain makes Britain great. Then Manchester is.
Then we get easily the best track on the album, which is Manchester, which is a very celebratory song about the city that Heaton had recently at this time called home to, and the sides in to this day, it's got a kind of very upbeat sort of piano motive, very sort of similar to the earlier song Good as Gold, and some great lyrics on it. He sings on it wow, that deck chair in the garden makes no sense, it doesn't spoil the view or cause offence. For me, it's easily the best song on the album. It made the Last King of Pop compilation a couple of years ago, the only Beautiful South song from the 21st century essentially to feature on that compilation, which is quite significant. Certainly, for me, one of their best songs, and wasn't a huge single like at the time. It reached number 41 on the charts, but still a good song here. Manchester, yeah, for me, would get a full 10 out of 10.
There's always some.
Next one up is called There Is Song, which is a kind of ballad, this one, kind of where Heaton sings about sort of the power of music and songs. He sings like, whatever your situation, whatever it may allow, there's an even larger peace in every lost and found. It's a very pleasing song again. It's nice enough when it's on. It's just it is a little bit I guess maybe cheesy kind of thing. Like sort of like it's kind of like say sort of something like ABBA's like Thank You for the Music, like songs like that, which are kind of a bit sort of like sugary sweet, like kind of like lyrics on it. It's not helped by like an over-egged string section on it as well, but it's got quite a good harmonica solo played by Heaton himself, which is a nice unique touch. So overall, that one would get a 8 out of 10 from me.
The cat loves a mouse. The mouse loves a...
Next up is called The Cat Loves the Mouse, which is a more rockier song by Beautiful South standards. This one about aging, like with kind of like a call and response lyric like from Heaton and Wheeler. He like sings like, so when I'm old and grey, you know you already are, and if I've overstayed my welcome by a day, just feel free to say. I like the kind of flamenco touches throughout the song, and like in like the arrangement. For me, it just doesn't stand out as one of their absolute classics, but on the album, it is a good album track there. So yeah, that one would get an 8 out of 10 as well.
Roses in garden bring joy to the bleak.
Next up is maybe one of my least favourites on the album. It's called Next Verse, which is another slower ballad, this one. And it's kind of it's punctuated by a lot of brass, this song. You've kind of got a tuba going on throughout most of the song. And lyrically it is just a bit dull, really. And like yeah, it's just a boring song, this, for me. It's not one that really grabs me at all. And then it kind of then like and then kind of like once like the song like actually finishes, this brass section comes back in again, and you've just had enough like off like the song like by that point. So yeah, the next verse for me, certainly one of my least favourites on the album.
And you'll know when love starts to fade. That balance.
Next up on the album is called When Romance Is Dead, which is a song about sort of that stage like in like a relationship, like where sort of like marriage problems like start to like kick in. It's sung by Dave Hemingway and Alison Wheeler, this one, like notably like one of like the only vocal features from Dave Hemingway on the album. And yeah, I think it's a good song. I think the melody is quite memorable. I like the musical arrangement. Again, there's a lot of different parts to it, like parts to this song, like with changes in tempo and like instrumentation with sort of like more intense drumming, like and like guitars in places, and then like bits like where they sort of back off. For me, certainly one of the better songs on the album. Plus, it all happens like in less than 3 minutes, and like yeah, there's so much going on like on this song. So for me, would get a 9 out of 10. It is probably one of the few songs I really go back to on the album.
Meanwhile, our whole world is collapsing. Look out.
Next one up is called Meanwhile, which is another kind of country style song, again sung by Dave Hemingway, and I think is another really solid song. Actually, his 2 songs like on this album are both really good. Like it's lyrically about how 2 people like are like don't want to marry like each other, like this sings on it. The congregation's nervous, especially the bride to be, because there's 3 of them she'd rather have gone down on bended knee. I like how they also invert the usual song structure where the chorus, like in normal songs, it gets louder or more intense, like whereas on this one it gets quieter and like the beat drops out, and that's quite unique, and like certainly like gives it like a kind of different flavour. Plus, you've got a great guitar solo on it as well, like Dave Rothery like putting in a pretty good performance there too. So yeah, Meanwhile, another good song, would give that one a 9 out of 10.
Surely then you got the means to make it.
Next Next up is called Space, which begins with a kind of piano and a kind of marching style drum beat on it. I read one reviewer compare this to the House Martin song We're Not Deep, and while that's a bit of a stretch, like in terms of comparison, I would say like I could vaguely hear like the relationship like there. And I think it's about sort of like having like human compassion like for like each other. He sings about sort of being like a co-driver to someone and like sort of like take and like a sort of like being there for them like in like a difficult situation, delivered in a quite a fun, quite a lightweight like rockabilly number. So yeah, I think it is another good song. This would give it an 8 out of 10.
If luck should quit this town, fortune sails.
Next track on the album is called Bed of Nails, which is a slower and I would say haunting ballad, this one. And I think it's got an absolutely killer melody, like, especially like on like the chorus, like where like Heaton and Wheeler sing. If luck should quit this town, if fortune sails, if conversation breaks down, if love derails, I'll swap this bed of roses for a bed of nails. Just the way they sing that together works really, really, really well. And for me, again, is one of the stronger tracks on the album. Even though it is a bit long, it's a bit slow, this one as well. I do rather like the track, and I would give it a 9 out of 10.
But I've never lost a chicken to a fox.
Next up is called Never Lost a Chicken to a Fox. Strange title, and it's a kind of country style song. This again, it's got a lot of twangy guitars in it, there's sort of barrel house piano going on, but it's got a strong backbeat, a sort of swaggery vocal from Heaton. I mean, the track is very safe, it's nothing we haven't really heard before from the Beautiful South, but it's a good listen while it's on. It doesn't add too much to the album, but then it doesn't take away too much either. So yeah, for me, would get a 7 out of 10.
Number one from now on.
The notable track now is called From Now On, which is a quite a dark song lyrically. It seems to be about like an over-possessive partner. He sings like on it, set the code, close the door, you don't live there anymore, I'm your number one from now on. And yeah, the music for me just doesn't quite fit like that quite sort of serious lyric, and for the most part it is a forgettable song again, and it just doesn't really add too much to the album. So yeah, again, for me, would get a 5 out of 10.
Tears have rolled down many good cheeks. So
okay, next track up is called Tears, which is the closing song on the album, and the kind of lyric on this is kind of about the universality of sort of crying. Like he sings like on it, like bricklayer, teacher, firefighter or vet, one thing in common is the hankies they've wet. And yeah, it's a good song. I think Heaton's vocal is very emotive on it. It's got good string backing, and it is a kind of, yeah, it is one of these sort of rousing sort of like closing songs. Definitely a suitable closer to the album. So yeah, for me, would get a 7 out of 10. But again, it's hardly a song which I'm gonna say adds to say like a very best of Paul Heaton like playlist like or like anything. Like it's just I'd say one of his more like average by the numbers songs. Okay, so overall this album would score a 77%. So I would say, even though there is a fair score for it, this is probably one of my least favourite Beautiful South albums. I mean, and like also despite having many years to write this album, like as I said like earlier, like this was like the largest gap between album releases like in like Heaton's career like up to this point, and for me still a lot of the songs just don't stand out too much on the album. But again, like there is only really like the one song which has really endured like on the album, like which is Manchester. As I said though, this was the Beautiful South's last album, and Heaton would go solo after this album, and continuing though with the more Americana feeling on his album Cross-Eyed Rambler. But for me, that album is a lot more angry, a bit more political, and it's got that extra bite, which for the most part is missing from this record, which is a very safe album. Like lyrically, like there's not really like too much edge to like a lot of like these songs, and like yeah, like it is just like and like yeah, just for me like one of like his more like average albums, but certainly one which I would like to see reissued like on vinyl. Like it's never been put out like on vinyl before, so we just have to settle like for CDs like for like the time being, but hopefully they will get on to a vinyl release of it. So yeah, that's been my review of the beautiful South Superbi. So I would be interested to know what you think of it in the comments below, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.
Leaving the singer, his head in his hands, public emotion beat down.